then the only thing that happens is your brain concentrates on, let's say, the tree that's 50 yards away, which is your only way to escape.
So let's start with something simple. So a little bit of the science, if you're okay with that. When we talk about stress, and I guess we'll start with acute stress in the first instance, what does that mean? And is that a good term?
I think that's a very important question because the term stress is used incredibly loosely by different people. And in fact, when different people use it, it means completely different things to those individuals. I prefer not to use the word stress if I possibly can. And what I like to use is the term stressor. That is something that causes a stress. And so if you have stressors, they will cause your body to be stressed in various ways. And this might be an acute stressor, as an event, a specific event that occurs, or there might be chronic stressors which occur over a prolonged period of time. And so if we think in terms like that, it's easier to understand what we mean by stress.
Do you mind just giving us a little bit of background about what stress is from a kind of biological point of view? What is actually happening, and is it a good or a bad thing?
I think the really important thing to understand about acute stress is that it is adaptive. It is an extremely useful response to some threat. So when we're talking about stress, I think the important thing to bear in mind is that we're talking about perceived stress. So nothing necessarily needs to have happened to you. But if you're perceiving a situation as stressful, that is sufficient for it to act as a stressor upon your system. So, if you think something terrible is going to happen to you, you will have a stress response. Before you go to an interview, nothing's happened to you, but you will feel stressed because you perceive that the situation you're in is going to be stressful. Now, the acute stress response is really important because, if you imagine that you're walking across the savannah and a lion appears, you don't want to be just totally laid back and say, oh, there's a lion. You want to do everything you possibly can to get away from that lion. And so you have an acute response which does several things. You have a hormonal response, which helps you put up your blood sugar. You have a cardiac response, which puts up your heart rate, which means that there's more blood and more sugar going around in the body. And you also have an activational process in the brain, which is really very interesting because what it does is it makes you ignore all the things that you might be thinking about. You've got an itch in your big toe or something like this. You ignore all of that. Then the only thing that happens is your brain concentrates on, let's say, the tree that's 50 yards away, which is your only way to escape. And it actually changes your mental processes. So acute stress is adaptive. It is something that is very useful. And without it, you could imagine that in an environment like you have complaints, you would be eaten very soon because you wouldn't be adapting to what's going on around you.